Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to the podcast. We have a ton of shit to talk about today. Stephanie, I want to start with Anheuser-Busch and the announcement that they made on Monday that they are going to be investing 300 million in expanding their US manufacturing jobs. So this is going to include 5 million invested in their Columbus, Ohio facility where they're going to apparently build a new technical excellence center. And the CEO, Brendan Whitworth, he put out a press statement and said, quote, as the largest provider of jobs in the American beer industry, we have a responsibility to set the standard for how our industry invests in the future of American manufacturing. With today's announcement, we are using our scale, strategy, and capabilities to drive meaningful economic prosperity and opportunities in manufacturing. This new $300 million investment in our manufacturing facilities across the U.S. is the latest example of Anheuser-Busch's commitment to strengthening our local communities by creating and sustaining jobs and driving economic prosperity, end quote. And so, according to Fox News, they're also going to be partnering with the Manufacturing Institute's Heroes Make America program, which is a program that helps veterans. And this is going to make Anheuser-Busch the first American manufacturer to adopt a new digital credentialing system that I guess translates military experience into skills needed for manufacturing. I think this is really awesome. It sounds to me like they're completely trying to shift gears away from the woke Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light campaign from 2023. And I know they tried, with some more traditional male advertising over the past year, but what do you think about this?
I think it's the Trump effect. I mean, talk about a complete 180. Like you go from saying you want to change your frat boy image by having Dylan Mulvaney, who clearly has never had a beer before, as a spokesperson, to like helping veterans and taking this America First strategy. I think it's great. I think it's a bold move and might be like the one and only thing that could actually help them win back some of their consumer base because I know they lost a lot of people with that. And it's just, I don't know, like hearing that, I feel like America is back. It's like things are right side up again, exactly as they should be. So I'm all for it. They need a bold strategy to move forward, and it might actually work, believe it or not. I mean, I could get behind that. But speaking of, America being back, the stock market soared again, just like Trump said it would, with news that the US and China have paused this whole escalating tariff war. So they paused it for 90 days while they negotiate. So I wanted to just go over like what's happening because I'm hearing so much just nonsense in the media, of course. So the United States reduced tariffs on Chinese imports from that 145% down to 30%. And then China lowered its tariffs on US goods from 125% to 10%. Um, so a separate 20% US tariff is related to China's role in fentanyl trade. Because what's happening is the fentanyl is still pouring in. And so just like they did with Mexico, they're saying you need to get this under control. And until you do, we're going to keep this 20%. And the other thing is like in China, I mean, we know it's a surveillance state, right? Like they know who's making this, who's sending it. And if they were making drugs for the people of China, the penalties are very severe, way more severe than the United States. But since it's the United States that they're sending it to, or the cartels in Mexico, they don't give a shit. And so hopefully this will be enough motivation for them to crack down on it, just as if the drugs were going into China.
Mhm.
So that's a big part of it. But all the fear mongering of the Democrats and the MSM that, this was going to cause prices to skyrocket, they're caught with their pants down. And I'd also like to point out that Biden had kept the tariffs on China that Trump implemented in his first term. In fact, he actually increased them. So in 2024, tariffs increased to 100% on electric vehicles from China. They increased to 50% on solar panels, EV batteries and critical minerals were set at 25%, and steel and aluminum products increased to 25%. And Tara, I don't know about you, but I don't remember one Democrat or member of the media that had anything to say about tariffs at that time because it was the Biden administration that had them going on. But when it's Trump, we hear, oh, the sky's falling. But let's not forget that China has had massive tariffs on the United States for a long time. They were charging anywhere from 10 to 25% on soybeans, pork, beef, and dairy, 15 to 25% on liquefied natural gas, crude oil, and coal, 25% plus on cars, 5 to 20% on machinery, and up to 15% on semiconductors. Whiskey, wine, and spirits, 15 to 20% tariff on US goods. Luxury items, 10 to 15% tariffs. Now that's come down to 10% across the board, which means Trump is winning this trade war. I don't know how they're trying to spin this any other way. And not to mention, outside of China, you have nearly every other major country that's paying us at least 10% after screwing the United States for decades. And so they're expecting that this is going to bring in anywhere from 300 to 600 billion dollars per year. Plus, originally it was 3 trillion. Now Trump announced it's closer to 10 trillion dollars in businesses investing in America since he took office. Inflation is at its lowest rate in 4 years. So this is working. His plan with the tariffs is absolutely working. They're making America great again. The stock market is booming. The future looks bright. And I am absolutely eating it up watching the MSM cover this because it is the exact opposite of what they predicted would happen. And, of course, now they're trying to spin it saying, well, he's just making himself and his friends rich with the stock market. Like this was all planned. I'm sorry, but we're all invested in the stock market. Middle America has their pensions and their 401ks invested in the stock market. When the stock market does well, interest rates go down. It is good for everyone. So they can spin it however they want, but like, this is amazing and it's fucking working. And I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, and he's not doing, secretive under the table shit like the Biden admin did.
Right.
He flat out posts on Truth Social every time he says he's going to make some kind of announcement and he tells people this would be a good time to invest. Like he's laying it out there for the American people to get on board with his program. And if you do, you're going to reap the benefits. And it's like that is
Absolutely.
so completely opposite of fucking everything that Biden did. And you mentioned earlier, like the tariffs that Biden had implemented on China. No, we never heard about them. We never heard about
Right.
anything they fucking did.
Yep.
So I'm like beyond excited with everything Trump's doing. And on top of that, this tariff program has been in effect for what, a month, 2 months tops, like not
Yeah.
even.
I
And
think it
look
was
how
the beginning of
well.
April, right?
Yeah.
Liberation Day. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this, I think this is amazing. And I just want to see it keep going forward in a positive direction. And I want to bring up something else positive because some other interesting news related to the Trump admin. I saw this on Fox Digital yesterday. They reported that Tulsi Gabbard, the National Intelligence Director, she just fired the top officials that were leading the National Intelligence Council. And she's now moved that office from the CIA to her office at National Intelligence to ensure that she can directly hold accountable any improper action and I can never say that word,
Politiz
politicization.
That is a hard word. Oh my gosh. Politicization? Politic
Yes, politicization, I think.
Tongue
English,
twister.
English major here. Yeah, okay. Anyway, the politicization of intelligence. Oh my God, let's move on. So anyway, she fired the acting chair, Mike Collins, and He reportedly had whistleblower complaints against him for political bias and for deliberately undermining the Trump admin. And I guess he had close ties to Michael Morrell, who was the former CIA deputy director. And he was the one who was basically leading the charge in the whole false Russian disinformation campaign with the Hunter Biden laptop story. And then the second person who was fired was Collins' deputy, Maria Langen-Rykoff, and she's been described as a key advocate for DEI. And whistleblowers allege that she is, quote, radically opposed to Trump. So personally, I'm glad we are finally seeing some of the deep state being rooted out.
Yeah, I hope they continue to clean house because, I mean, these people, I'm sure they're everywhere. And I'm sure that the MSM is going to go crazy over this, that she's firing people.
Absolutely. I want to go international for a minute because I want to get your take on this. I thought this was very interesting. So on Monday, Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer, he unveiled a very comprehensive 82-page immigration document called Restoring Control Over the Immigration System. And this is really a huge shift in how Britain has been handling immigration, especially for Starmer because he's a member of the Labour Party. They've traditionally been very pro-immigration and backed open borders for years, and so is he personally. So I think he's only doing this because of all the protests that have been going on against immigration and the fact that the right-wing Reform Party, which is anti-immigration, has been gaining a lot of traction and a lot of support. So Starmer gave this speech on Monday where he said that the UK is risking becoming an island of strangers, and he's pledging to end the one nation experiment in open borders that has done incalculable damage to the country. So they call this document a white paper, and I want to go over what it entails. So it's calling for stricter English language requirements for all visa applicants. And for the first time ever, this is also going to include adult dependents. So if you're coming over here and you're bringing your spouse, you both have to pass an English proficiency standards test. And the residency requirement for most of Europe, I think, has been like 5 years. Even here in the Czech Republic, if you live here for 5 years, you can apply for residency. Well, the UK is upping that to 10 years, and it doesn't matter whether it's residency or citizenship. It's a minimum of 10 years. And so that is unless the migrant makes significant contributions to the UK economy or society. So, for example, positions like nurses, doctors, engineers, these could be fast tracked with immigration. But they're also trying to encourage domestic workforce development. So this includes a ban on overseas recruitment for foreign care workers. Skilled workers are now going to require degree level qualifications, and lower skilled workers are only going to be able to access the immigration system when there's evidence of shortage in the country's supply of labor in that particular field. And then there's going to be a limited pool of refugees and displaced people recognized by the UN who will be eligible for these jobs. Companies are going to have to pay a 32% surcharge if they want to sponsor migrant workers. Tests for colleges and universities offering places to foreign students are going to be made stricter. Right now, international students can stay in the UK for 2 years to study. They're going to drop that down to 18 months. And the plan is also calling for tightening the requirements for deportation and revoking visas for minor crimes. So, Stephanie, I asked our GPT to compare this plan to our immigration requirements in the US, and it is a lot stricter. And we don't even have a formal English test when it comes to visas. We only do that for citizenship and certain types of visas. And it only takes like 3 to 5 years typically for someone with a green card to apply for citizenship in the US. So Britain, like the UK, the country that has been welcoming, millions of migrants over their borders, destroying their country for years, now they're just doing a complete 180. And I got to say, I love the idea of an English proficiency test for visa applicants, not just for citizenship, because I've seen this firsthand. People can live and work in America for decades, like decades, and never have to learn a word of English. And I think this is something that needs to be changed.
No, I totally agree, especially since English is basically the language of the world. You know, most foreign countries, at least the developed ones, they teach English in school because, you know, we have this global economy. So at the very least, people who live here and want to become citizens should at least have to be proficient in the language of the country they're
Yeah.
trying to live in. I mean, I just, you know, that's what I think. And I actually think it's a good plan in the UK. I mean, whoever thought we would be praising their immigration plan? Just wild. But the question that I have is like, okay, are these requirements just going to make it harder for immigrants who follow the rules, but then allow all of these asylum seekers to just come in freely? And so I asked our GPT, and it said they also have a border security, asylum, and immigration bill to go along with the white paper. Um, and I guess it's passed its second reading in Parliament, so it's progressing forward. But this bill would enhance powers to fight immigration crime, establish a border security command, and it would help to reduce small boat crossings in the channel. And then it also would repeal the Safety of Rwanda Act, which appears to be like shifting their stance on asylum. So I think they would be cracking down on all these people claiming asylum. So it's just like wild seeing all of these countries and companies just doing a complete 180 from where they were just a few months ago. Um, is it the protests? Is it the Trump effect? Did we freaking like shift timelines? I don't know, but I feel like more optimistic than ever about our future. It's just crazy how much things can change in just a few short months. But speaking of which, like I've asked myself so many times in the last few days, am I in the twilight zone? Like, what the hell is happening here? Because not only are we seeing major changes like this in the UK, but we're seeing like some liberals in the media actually praising Trump, which I say that so cautiously. But first, I came across a clip from MSNBC, one of the most left leaning, if not the most left leaning network. And they were praising his executive order to lower prescription drug prices. Like I watched the clip multiple times because I'm like, is this MSNBC? Are they actually saying something nice? What is going on here? Um, but what's wild is they're praising him, but then you have Republicans in Congress that are against it. They're not supporting it. They're saying it resembles price controls, despite the fact that, like, across the board, this has bipartisan support among voters everywhere. So, like, once again, Congress is just like a shit show theater performance, and they don't want to get behind it. Um, but of course, the people who are opposing it obviously are getting paid by big pharma. They probably, you know, have lobbyists and whatever. So there was that. Then I come across this clip of that liberal show, The Young Turks. Have you heard of that?
I've
It's
heard of it. Yeah.
they're like they definitely are like the poster children for Trump derangement syndrome. Do not like the guy. Even they were praising him and his envoy for getting the last American hostage home from Gaza. So I'm just gonna play this clip because again, I'm shocked that I'm hearing this from them.
Credit here to Donald Trump. And if you're on the left and you're like, oh, he brought home a hostage and cut out Israel, but he's Trump. Boo. I don't want to give him credit. What do you need? What do you like? So did you not want to bring home a hostage? Did you want to make sure he followed the orders of the Israeli government? I don't know what you want, but I'm a fair person and an honest person. Trump deserves a lot of credit for this deal. Okay?
I can't believe I'm saying this. Someone who Donald Trump tapped to serve as his special envoy to the Middle East, Donald Trump tapped him, is way better on this issue than who Biden had involved in peace negotiations and a ceasefire deal. It's just incredible to see it.
Yeah. So look, redemption on every count. So what do we tell you? We told you that the Democrats are a bunch of robots and they're never going to waver 1 inch from what the donor class wants. Okay. Trump is a wild card. And that wild card could go disastrously, as when he was talking about how we would have ground troops in Gaza and they'd build a Trump Riviera, absolute disaster. Talking about maybe, the occupation of Gaza and the West Bank, et cetera. But a wild card could also has some chance of going in the right direction. So it took a wild card to have an envoy who will say, well, the Israelis don't want peace.
So I am shocked, number one. Like, they're not saying they love Trump, but they're giving him some credit. And she's been kind of flipping for a while now because she was attacked in LA by a homeless person. And then when she spoke out about it on her show, all the liberals went crazy and they were like, how dare you, the poor homeless people, how dare you complain you were almost raped, So she's kind of changing. And I think it just signals a bigger shift that's happening in our culture where even some people on the left are like, maybe that he's not so bad after all.
But that's what it takes to get people on the left to see any kind of shift. It has to personally impact them in a positive way before they will even deign to consider that Trump might have a good idea or that something that's not liberal is a good policy. And I was completely floored because I saw this CNN article that was admitting that egg prices in the United States are the lowest they've been in years and that this is happening under Trump's leadership. And of course, they had to try at first to spin the narrative and say that Trump lied last month and exaggerated about the drop in egg prices. But then the article actually admitted and said, quote, now we know that consumer egg prices were indeed falling sharply when Trump made those remarks, and the consumer price index data wasn't out yet to confirm or deny Trump's claims, end quote. So yesterday, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that egg prices fell 12.7% last month, which is the biggest monthly decline since 1984. And of course, being CNN, they had to point out that egg prices are still significantly higher than before the last bird flu outbreak. But what they neglected to mention was that the whole reason is because the Biden admin killed the millions of chickens.
Right. And this was their main talking point for the first, 3 months of the year.
Yes.
So I think it's hilarious. Yeah, I saw an economist, and I think it was on CNN, where he was basically admitting yeah, we got it wrong, but it wasn't just us. All economists got it wrong. I guess the economy is just more resilient than we realized. And I'm like, yeah, because things are looking really good right now. So, they have egg on their face and they're trying to carefully, step this back. But I think most people are awake to the nonsense that they've been spewing for so long. And you're going to freaking love this. I don't know if you've heard about it yet or not, but CNN's Jake Tapper, we all know who he is. He hates Trump, right? So he just wrote a book on how the American people were lied to about Biden's mental decline. It's some big shocking discovery, as if he didn't play a role in that deception. So I have a couple of clips. The first one is of him acting like he's just completely shocked that we were all lied to by the White House. Listen to this.
Him around. And I'm just curious as to whether or not this kind of trying to hide what was happening with the president at the time had an impact on the press corps. Why didn't we hear some of these details from what they actually saw and were dealing with trying to get information?
Well, Alex Thompson and I were on the case, as were lots of other reporters, trying to figure out what was going on behind the scenes. But the bottom line is the White House was lying, not only to the press, not only to the public, but they were lying to members of their own cabinet. They were lying to White House staffers. They were lying to Democratic members of Congress, to donors about how bad things had gotten. And in fact, Alex and I started writing this book after the election of 2024, and we spoke with more than 200 people most of whom, almost all of whom, were Democrats, and almost all of whom wouldn't be honest with us or wouldn't be candid with us until after the election. And then after the election, we found out all of these things that when you looked at what was going on with President Biden at the time, it probably doesn't surprise you the extent to which he was deteriorating. But now we have anecdotes and facts about what was really going on behind the scenes with details that Democrats wouldn't share with us until after Election Day.
Oh, we didn't know until after the election. He is
Not
like
at
a
all.
freaking Gavin Newsom lying through his teeth. And you know what? I'm going to prove it because I'm going to play another clip that is a compilation of Jake Tapper, who you just heard, over the last 4 years, lying, outright lying about Biden's mental state. And not only that, but gaslighting anyone who questioned it, making them sound like the crazy, unreasonable ones.
I think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
It's very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable.
You are no. I can't. It's so amazing. It's so amazing to me that
and try to figure out an answer.
A cognitive decline. President Biden embraces his stutter, talking about it. Well, Trump mocks it, exaggerates it, belittles it. He's sharp physically. I mean, mentally. Yeah, I think the question is physically, right? Right. More so? Right. And the guy who's his chief opponent is only 3 or 4 years younger than him. Exactly. I mean, you have questioned President Biden's age, mental fitness, ability to lead. Of those supporting Biden, you said, quote, "Shame on all of you pretending everything is okay. You're leading us and him into a disaster." Do you worry that you damaged him at all? I don't doubt that you got hugs and handshakes behind closed doors today, and maybe even publicly, some of them because they like you personally. But I've heard a lot of really nasty stuff about you from your Democratic colleagues. Sure. I mean, just like, what is he thinking? Exercise in narcissism. I mean, false claims to the Wall Street Journal about President Biden's mental fitness and acuity. He's 81, and his memory, it doesn't seem great. It's not horrible, but I don't understand the outrage. Well, behind closed doors, Biden shows signs of slipping, unquote. The Wall Street Journal is owned by News Corp, which is run by the Murdochs. Beyond the headline, there is some critical nuance here. The article is mostly based on observations of Republicans, with former Speaker Kevin McCarthy the only one going on the record. They do note in the article that most of the criticism comes from Republicans. Have you heard any concerns from anyone who has met with President Biden about him seeming a little slower? No. The Russians are trying to make us and the public not trust our election integrity. Joe Biden has dementia, all this stuff.
So he totally pushed that narrative that no, like, you guys are crazy. There's no mental decline. I think that's what Joe Biden would call a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, you know what? I will never take Jake Tapper or his book seriously. Like, this was not a case of, oh my gosh, they suddenly found out that, Biden wasn't well. He was complicit in this cover up for 4 fucking years.
Yeah, and so everyone knew it. Everyone knew it.
Right. And so I just, like, how fucking stupid are you that you're going to put out this book and expect people to believe that you had no fucking idea what was going on? It's such bullshit. And speaking of, like, the unhinged Democratic left, I have to give an update on that whole incident from Monday with the members of Congress who went to the new ICE detention facility in Newark for their quote unquote oversight inspection, where they brought their camera crew and everything along, and then ended up trying to force their way through the gate when a bus of inmates was arriving. So and we talked about, they need to be arrested, right? There needs to be some accountability. Well, the DHS is actively considering now arresting these 3 Congress members. And again, it's Robert Menendez, Bonnie Watson-Coleman, and LaMonica McIver. And no formal charges have been filed yet. But after looking at the body cam footage from the ICE agents, DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin stated that arrests are on the table, and Kristi Noem has publicly accused these 3 of committing felonies and is calling for their censure. And then Rep. Buddy Carter from Georgia introduced a resolution on Tuesday that these 3 reps should be stripped of their committee assignments in Congress. And so, in response, now we have AOC making threats to the Trump administration that they're going to have a problem with her if the DHS tries to pursue these arrests. So, she did a video on Instagram and she basically said that if anyone's breaking the law in this situation, it's not members of Congress, it's the Department of Homeland Security. It's people like Tom Homan and Kristi Noem. And she said the DHS is using public intimidation tactics and they can't come for all of us, meaning all the leftist whack jobs. And she said, quote, you lay a finger on someone, on Rep. Bonnie Watson Coleman, or any of the representatives that were there, you lay a finger on them, we are going to have a problem.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't it a felony to threaten a federal employee? Because that to me sounds like she is threatening and she's calling them out by name, Tom Homan and Kristi Noem.
Right.
Can she get arrested for that? Like, please do. Shut her up. Oh my God. Okay, I am so excited. I got to switch gears. We have to talk about the Saudi Arabia trip that Trump took because I have been waiting for this. I remember the first time he went there, it was like they threw him a freaking parade. I mean, it was just crazy. And this was no different. Like, stark contrast to Biden's visit. Like, do you remember that? I know we talked about it back when Biden went there, and he was greeted like outside his hotel with like a fist bump and more or less like an eye roll. I mean, they
Yes.
definitely did not, roll out the carpet for him. Totally different with Trump's visit. So, first of all, you have the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who broke protocol and went onto the tarmac to personally greet President Trump as he exited Air Force One, which never happens. They always send like someone, beneath them to like go and do this kind of greeting. But he was there. There was a long handshake. It was no fist bump. Um, then you had the Saudi royal guards on horses holding American flags, escorting Trump in his limo to, where they were going. They had Saudi fighter jets escorting Air Force One in the air. And then he gets there and it looks like there's a whole freaking army like awaiting his arrival and like the purple carpet, which symbolizes generosity in their culture, and just a totally different feel from Biden's visit. And I thought this was hilarious. The Saudis even brought in a mobile McDonald's for Trump. It was like this big trailer McDonald's. I'm like, oh my God, that's hilarious because, he loves his McDonald's Diet Coke. Um, and a lot was accomplished during this trip. So there's this strategic economic partnership agreement that was signed, and this encompasses defense, energy, and technology collaborations. We already talked about Saudi Arabia pledging to invest 600 billion in the US where they would focus on things like AI and energy and infrastructure. But Trump was kind of pushing I think it's going to be 1 trillion, so we could see that number come up. I don't think it was finalized. Saudi-based Data Vault announced a $20 billion investment in US AI data centers, which, Tara, side note, we need to do a whole episode on data centers because I went down the rabbit hole and this is a big freaking deal. So the fact that they're investing 20 billion just on that is way more needed than we realize. Anyhow, the visit included this like high profile business summit with basically everyone, all the American business leaders. Of course, you had Elon Musk, and he was there talking about like his Optimus robots. You had Sam Altman of OpenAI, Jensen Huang of NVIDIA, Lisa Su of AMD, Alex Karp of Palantir Technologies. Of course, Larry Fink of BlackRock has to be involved in everything. But just everyone, like Amazon, like all the big companies, they were all there. And it just was very symbolic, of like this bilateral economic initiatives. The biggest arms agreement in history was signed. So this involves advanced US military equipment to enhance Saudi Arabia's defense capabilities. And then Trump encouraged Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords and addressed, all the issues that are related to Iran's nuclear program. And then when Trump was on stage, he received a standing ovation when he announced that he is going to lift sanctions on Syria. And this is actually a really big deal because this and just the whole meeting overall shows a big shift in the way that the US is going to interact with the Middle East, where we're going to focus on economic engagement and regional stability over prolonged military intervention. And I think it's great because we have freaking been at war in the Middle East for most of my life. And all that's come from it is like nonstop war, death, and destruction, along with the rise of extremist terrorist groups that probably wouldn't have happened if we would have just stayed the hell out of it. And so I think it's time for a change. And I know not everyone listening is going to agree with me. That's okay. But I think Trump is trying to get away from these, 20-year wars and instead, like, let's make everyone rich. Let's all do what's best for both countries economically. So anyhow, Saudi Arabia and Turkey, they look at Syria's new government as like a counterbalance to Iranian influence. So they were so excited. Like the crown prince was smiling. He put his hand on his heart when Trump announced the lifted sanctions. Like it was a very symbolic gesture. So overall, I just feel like it was a very impactful trip. Trump is reigniting confidence in America, like on the world stage, after we were basically laughed at by the world for the last 4 years under Biden. So again, like I just feel so optimistic. Like things are finally moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and this is only the beginning of the trip because he still has to go to Qatar and to United
Yeah.
Arab Emirates. And then I think he mentioned he might detour to Turkey also on Thursday because Putin and Zelensky are supposed to be meeting in Istanbul
Oh, yeah.
to talk about, the ending the war. So I think he might veer off to that as well. So this week could just be like such a historical week for not
Oh,
only
I
the United
know.
States, but the world.
This is huge. It's absolutely huge. And I have to bring up your husband was right about Qatar. So, like, some people pronounce it Qatar, Trump pronounces it Qatar, but then I heard a whole bunch of people pronouncing it Qatar because I was paying
Okay.
attention and I was like, oh, okay, we were both right. You can pronounce it either way.
Good. Okay. That makes me feel better because I was like, no, that can't be. It's not Qatar.
I know. I was like, no, that's another place, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
No,
you're
I
like,
was
it's
wrong.
not
Your
even
husband was right.
not even
Sorry.
the same country. Yeah. Well, speaking of foreign countries, I have another news story about Chinese spies infiltrating the United States and colleges and universities. And we've actually given several updates on like what happened with Berkeley and the Trump admin's investigations into these large-scale donations from the CCP. But this is a little different. This is a story that comes out of Stanford, and it was just detailed in the Stanford Review. So there is a Stanford student. They gave her the pseudonym of Anna to kind of keep her low profile, but she became the target of this reportedly very sophisticated influence operation by the CCP. And she's involved in very sensitive scientific research related to China. And she was contacted on social media by someone using the alias Charles Chen. And this guy said he was a fellow Stanford student and he was just looking for opportunities to network. So they started chatting. And then he started asking her weird questions like, how well does she speak Mandarin? And he was sending her videos of Americans who had become popular in China. And he kept trying to encourage her to visit Beijing and said he would even pay for her travel expenses. And he showed her screenshots of his bank account to prove that he had the money to send her there. And then shit got even weirder because he started referencing personal details about her and her life that she had never told him. So then he tried to convince her to go to China. And he said, just stay there somewhere between 24 hours to 144 hours to avoid any kind of visa scrutiny issues. And then told her to communicate exclusively on WeChat, which is a platform that's apparently well known for CCP surveillance. And then he asked her to delete all the screenshots of their conversation. So, fortunately, she thought this was like red flags and reported the interaction to authorities, who then found out that this Charles Chen was not even a student, had no affiliation with Stanford, but he's been impersonating Stanford students online for years, mostly targeting women involved in researching China-related topics. So they believe, experts are saying he's an agent of China's Ministry of State Security. And like their job is to look for sympathetic students and use them to gather intelligence. So, in response, the Senate Select Committee on the CCP sent a letter to Stanford University's president, Dr. Jonathan Levin, detailing the security risks of Chinese espionage in STEM research. So, I was asking our GPT about this incident, and it said that since Stanford is a prominent university in terms of fields like AI and quantum computing, that it's basically a prime target under the Made in China 2025 plan. Have you heard of this plan, Stephanie?
No.
Okay, I hadn't either. And I'm like, is this just a name that our GPT came up with, or is this a legitimate thing? And apparently it's a real thing because this plan was publicly announced by China's State Council this month, I think like a week or two ago. But the plan actually goes back to 2015. That's when it was launched. And it was developed by the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology. And they did this in collaboration with Chinese academic and industrial institutions. And like their official purpose is to transform China into this world manufacturing power. But the program went underground in 2018 because they were getting so much backlash from the US and the EU and over things like their mercantile policies and blatant tech theft and IP violations. So the CCP basically just stopped using the name, but they never changed the strategy. It just got rebranded under other names. There was China Standards 2035, the 14th five-year plan, and the dual circulation strategy, which were all this same 2025 plan. But we know, we've been talking for a long time, that their agenda is global dominance with tech and AI and quantum computing.
Uh-oh, Tara froze.
Telecommunications, advanced robotics, biopharma, semiconductors, and a whole bunch of other shit pertaining to aerospace and aviation. And for anyone who's been following our podcast for a while, like we've been reporting on this shit for the past 3 years. All these stories about the creepy advancements coming out of China related to all of these industries. And we've also talked about how a big part of this plan involves espionage and academics and research and corporations and the hacking and buying up the farmland and the stakes in Western firms and acquiring all this proprietary tech. And we've seen it time and time again. And we always talk about how this is part of China's long game. And, it's coming to a head now. And I have to say, Stephanie, I am loving our GPT because it took me down the rabbit hole of how all of this ties into shit like DARPA and obviously TikTok, the push for EVs. And I kind of started going down that rabbit hole. And then I was like, oh shit, it's time to record the podcast. So I'm going to leave it for there for now.
I know. I am going crazy with it because it really takes you deep down the rabbit hole. And then when you think you've hit the bottom, it's like, oh, do you want me to look into this? And it's like,
Yes.
yeah, please do. And it's the only thing I'm using now because everything else is just completely biased, in my opinion. But that's crazy. Like the espionage, I mean, they really are probably trying to target too all these young people that are going into tech because they're hiring people like right out of high school that are good at coding and things like that. So these companies really need to keep an eye on this because, man, like they have eyes everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. So, All right, we have to end on something funny. And of course, this is California. So this is taking place near Sacramento on Interstate 80, which is a very like highly congested highway. And it seems that California's very likely liberal state workforce is rebelling against Governor Newsom's recent decision to have them stop working remotely and come back to the office. And it's not even for the whole week, it's for 4 days a week instead of the 2 days a week that they've been coming in now. So a bunch of state employees managed to crowdsource more than $20,000 from over 800 donors on a Reddit forum, and they purchased a digital billboard that has an AI generated picture of Newsom laughing. Like it looks just that creepy Newsom, just
Hmm.
you know exactly what I'm talking about. And behind him, there's an image of bumper to bumper congested freeway traffic in the background. And he's like, two of his friends are also there laughing with him. And the billboard says, Newsom has mandated more traffic. Telework saves taxpayer dollars in the environment. Oppose return to office. So basically, these workers are saying that if you're sitting in traffic, it's because Newsom wants all these unfortunate government workers to come back to the office.
Oh my God. I think it's hilarious because it's like, you know, we really don't have to do anything. The left is just going to destroy itself because you have people like
Yes.
him, Newsom, and Jake Tapper that are now trying to like go where the crowd is going, which is more to the right. And the left is just going to like annihilate them
Yeah.
because what they hate more than Trump and like Trump supporters are people that were on their side on the extreme left that start to go to the right. Like they're just going to destroy themselves. But I think that's hilarious. And
Yeah.
yeah, what a shit show. There's a story every freaking day about California.
Oh, I know. And I bypass so many of them because like our episodes just get longer and longer and we have so much to talk about that I don't want to focus on California all the time, but trust me, the stories are never ending.
I enjoy it though. I feel like it's kind of like a sitcom, you know? It's
Yes.
like The Office, but for California. It's just
Yeah.
it's hilarious and it's crazy, but I appreciate your stories, so keep them coming.
Okay.
Oh man, well, another jam-packed few days, and I already have so many things I want to talk about for Friday, but I need to research them a little more. So we'll see everyone back here then. Thanks for tuning in.